Yo, what's up everybody? This is Brodeur AKA Brilly, and today I'm going to show you how to add graffiti to a brick wall or really any kind of texture. And it doesn't just have to be graffiti, it could be any kind of painted surface or specifically textured surface that you want on an object. And we're going to do this without UV mapping. UV mapping is obviously really powerful and the way to go for most things, but sometimes you just might not have the time to do UV mapping, or maybe the specific object that you're working on, UV mapping is just a bit overkill. And so I'm going to show you today exactly how we're going to be able to do this with this basic plane here, and let's add some graffiti to it. So first, let's go into our Octane Live viewer, and we're going to open up our live database in Octane. Now, it is definitely important that while you're in your live database that you save your scene, and Octane will kind of remind you here, hey, please save your scene before downloading any material just in case it crashes. But let's kind of expand this out and we can take a look at our materials here. And let's go into stone, and let's see if we can locate some good brick materials that we can use. So I'm just going to scroll on down here, and really any brick material that we want will work good. So I'm just going to go to this first one here that says bricks, and I will click download. Once we click download, we can just close out of our live database, and just like that, we've got our brick material. Looks like I downloaded it twice. So I'm just going to drag that brick material onto our plane. All right, so what if I wanted to simply add some graffiti to this? Well, if we look at this brick material, let's just open this up and open it up in our node editor here. And we just get a little bit of a quick idea of what this is built up out of. So pretty simple and straightforward. You can see we do have a bump map here, which we will be wanting to utilize here in a moment. So we will be taking a look at a handful of these different nodes here in a minute. But for now, this is pretty good to go. We will be grabbing this bump map as I mentioned. So let's just close out of that. That really was what makes up this here brick texture. Now, what if I wanted to have some graffiti to it? Well, let's make a new material. So I say material, and I'm going to create a glossy material. And this is going to be kind of my graffiti. So for my diffuse channel, I'm going to use an image texture node. So let me just drag an image texture node in here. Perfect. Okay, so I've got a basic image that I created in Photoshop here for my graffiti texture. And then along with that, I've got a black and white alpha version of this. So two really simple graffiti textures that I made in Photoshop, right? And so one that is in color and one that is just simply in black and white. And so now what I'll do is I'll take the color image and I'll plug it into the diffuse. And now I'll add another image texture in here. And I will grab the alpha, so just the black and white version, and I'm going to place this into the opacity. Now you can see that in our material preview here, it's actually subtracting out the opacity right now, subtracting out the graffiti and the color of that, and I don't want that. So I want it to do the opposite. So I'm going to just simply click invert on that opacity layer. And I'm going to close out of this for now. We'll get back into that in a second. And let's just add that directly here to our brick texture. Well, we can see that this is in fact upside down. We could go into our plane and mess around with this and change it from a positive to a negative Z, just like little basic stuff like that. Or you can always build a transform node and simply rotate or change the scale any way you want, which maybe we should do that anyway. So let's just open up our node editor once again. And I'll select both of these image texture nodes, and I'm just going to say add to a transform. And we can simply come into that transform node and mess and adjust the scale if we want, play around with that. Now, although the graffiti texture is now on the surface of the brick, it doesn't actually feel like it's painted on the surface of the brick. But all we have to do for this is we can select that brick material and we can go into where that bump map was. And I can just simply go into there and say copy shader. And then let's jump into the graffiti and say paste layer, paste shader. And now we'll get that bump that's in there. Now, if you're getting like this soft little white haloed edge around the graffiti, you can simply just go in and go into that image texture node in the opacity, and we can mess with the gamma a little bit. So I think if we bring that gamma down, it'll kind of choke that in a little bit, and now we get less or completely remove any of that white edge. But that's simply it, right? And so, you know, now you can really mess around with this overall, and we could even come to this node editor, and we could go into the opacity node. Let me just move this bump off to the side here. We can come into this opacity node, select that, and you could begin to mess with the overall power of that. And so if you want it a little bit faded on the brick as well, right? So it's maybe not as heavy or dense, you know, it feels like it's like faded from the sun, or, you know, some bleached out a little bit. So then you can play around with that overall power, and that's really it. You know, super simple, little quick tip, but some way to add that texture to the surface of an object really quickly without UV mapping. Again, UV mapping obviously is the king, but to UV map some certain objects, this could really be the way to do it. It works really quick, and you never have to leave the software.